Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit and Counsel. We're about almost 10 minutes late getting on tonight. We've had kind of a lot of technical difficulties in the last 20 to 30 minutes. It's been kind of crazy, probably because of our topic tonight, which is really important, and it's about being a peacemaker. And, you know, the enemy loves to try to steal your peace right before you're about to impart peace, but I think our peace is still intact.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm
Still breathing.
Yeah.
Heart still beating. So we're doing good. So I am Justin, and this is my lovely wife.
Hey, I'm Leanna.
And we do this podcast to kind of bring two worlds together. I've been in ministry for around 22, 23 years. And you also have a kind of unique calling and skill set.
Yep. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered play therapist.
Yeah, so we try to bring together the world of emotional and spiritual health, kind of coming from two different perspectives. But, you know, we've been married for over 20 years. We've been doing ministry and counseling and things like that together for a very long time. And so we obviously, as people who interact with people, and as people who have 4 kids and who live lives that aren't easy every day,
Definitely not easy.
we recognize that there are challenges that we all face, and as we're growing and we're learning, we identify things, just kind of nuggets of truth, and we'll often throughout the course of a month say, oh, this is what we need to do Spirit and Counsel on. And this is one of those topics that I think is really, really important. The title is actually going from a smile faker to a peacemaker. And kind of what we're talking about with that is, you know, we all recognize the value of being someone who walks in peace. You know, somebody who is calm and somebody who's cool and doesn't get upset easy and who doesn't go around offended and angry. So we all know that that's important. And so at the very least, you know, we put on a smile, even if things are a whirlwind on the inside. You know, we put on sort of a happy face to try to give the appearance that everything is cool. But what we really want to do is we want to grow into someone who really is legitimately walking in peace, even in the midst of the chaos of life and the chaos of the times that we live in and the chaos of difficult seasons that we go through. And so that's what we're going after tonight, is we want to grow into people who genuinely walk in peace and who are peacemakers, those who can impart peace to others, those who can even kind of mediate between two parties to bring peace. That's something in ministry, leadership, counseling that you inevitably end up doing a lot, is trying to bring peace between parties.
Yeah, absolutely. New Year's Eve every year, I kind of sit with the Lord and ask Him what His goals are for me or with me in the year. And for last year, so I guess that would have been 2022 going into 2023, He told me that His only goal for me was to stay in peace no matter what happened that year. And I had no idea that it was going to be a year just full of tons of transition. And so for me, for some people, transition is really fun and exciting. And it's not that it's not those things. It's just that's not my go-to emotion around transition.
Yeah.
And so I was really able to hold on to that word and that goal with the Lord. And so some of what we're going to be talking about tonight is some of what I have learned in the last year and continuing to learn. So
yeah. And I process change and transition differently. I kind of do, you know, enjoy it, and it is kind of thrilling and exciting. I don't want unnecessary change and transition because that's just chaos, but I think I kind of do well in transition, or maybe even enjoy it a little bit. So, you know, to some people that's weird, but so this idea of a peacemaker, you know, this is something that is actually part of what I would say was the original apostolic mandate. So whenever Jesus first sent out the 12 in Matthew chapter 10, he kind of gave them a list of assignments that they were going to be walking out as they first went out, their first go sent by Jesus. And these things are kind of a pattern for us because he tells them, go out into all of the surrounding regions and, don't worry about money and food and clothing. Don't even take anything with you, but go and trust God to provide and eat whatever is set before you and stay in whatever place is open before you. And everywhere you go, cast out devils and heal the sick and preach the kingdom. But he says this really interesting thing in that section in Matthew 10. He says, whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it and stay there until you depart. And as you enter the house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. I think that's such a powerful idea. He's telling them as they're going out and they're, introducing people to Jesus and they're bringing the kingdom of God, they have an assignment to, in some places, let their peace come upon the household. I think that's a real picture of a peacemaker. Like you're carrying something, and part of your assignment is that the peace that is in you needs to be released to other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a big part of our calling as peacemakers, is we want to be people who carry peace, but also people who, don't just have enough peace for our own world, but we can actually help others find a place of peace and we can share peace with others. So I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I was even thinking about how one of Jesus' name's Prince of Peace. Mm-hmm. And so, him kind of living in and all around us, we carry that peace with us too. And mm-hmm. And I think also sometimes that is a marked difference between us and people that aren't believers.
Yeah.
Is peace. So.
Yeah, because we know a God who made everything and who's powerful and who's given us great promises. And so even when things are shaky or chaotic, we have someone that we can trust in. And of course, somebody who doesn't believe in the Lord doesn't have someone who is trustworthy that they can trust in. So that's kind of where we're going tonight. Just a few things we want to mention as we start to wade into these waters. One thing that I'll say is the majority of people who watch this live find out about it because we send out an email every month letting everybody know what's happening, what's coming up. And we have had a very full and, wonderful and not always so externally peaceful week or so. We've had
busy week.
It has been busy, out-of-state wedding. We've had a couple sick kids, just a whole lot going on. And so we weren't able to send the email out, but we wanted to go ahead and do this tonight anyway. But we are going to be sending an email out, and we're going to be doing kind of a part 2 to this tonight. So we still want to let everybody know by email so that people can join like they normally do. But since I verbally said we were going to be doing this tonight, we wanted to go ahead and keep it tonight. It might be a shorter, episode. And then probably next week, there will be a part 2 that we'll send an email out ahead of time. And there's also some cool things that you're going to be doing, kind of continuing the conversation after we do these podcasts.
I really felt like the Lord was asking me to do some continuing the conversation episodes with some of my close friends that really walk with the Lord and are really leaders in the body of Christ. And so I'm not sure exactly how often we'll be doing them, but we'll definitely let you know when we do, and we're planning to do one this month. So it'll kind of be taking our topic and conversation and extending it with my guests. And I'll tell you, one of my first guests, she is a powerhouse. Y'all are going to want to watch. I'm not going to say who it is yet, but she's an author, she's a speaker, she's incredible, and y'all are really going to love what she has to bring. So
I agree. It's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's coming up. And also, since we didn't get the email out, I have no idea how many people are going to join live. But if you could do us a favor, please go ahead and first of all, comment so that we see that you're watching and we know where you're watching from. So say, hey, I'm watching from Omaha, Nebraska, whatever. And please share the video, especially if you're on Facebook. Sharing will get it out in front of more people. If you're on YouTube, please like and comment. Again, that helps the algorithm to see it so that it'll be promoted more. So please share and comment and like. All those things will be really helpful in ensuring that more people are able to see this.
Yeah. And we have a Facebook and Instagram page now. So,
yeah. And what are they called, and how do people find those?
Counsel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spirit and Counsel.
On Instagram and Facebook. So
very good. So be checking that out also. I actually saw this week the software that we use that does live streaming supposedly can live stream to Instagram now.
Cool.
And so we're going to be testing that and seeing if that really works. I tried something a long time ago that did not work. All right, so becoming a peacemaker, going from a faker to a peacemaker. That's what we want to do.
Yeah. What are some other reasons why? I don't know. Even if I don't know if you ever faked it. I know I have at times, but what are some reasons that maybe you have kind of faked it in the past, or that people in general do you think fake it?
Yeah, I think there's probably a positive side of that, and then there's a negative side of that. Sometimes as both a parent or a leader, you could be in an unsettling situation where maybe there's uncertainty, or maybe things are really intense and you don't know how it's going to go. That whenever either your kids or people that you're leading are looking to you, there are times whenever, even if you're not really at peace, for the benefit of those that your kids or whoever, there could be a positive side of kind of putting on a face of everything's okay, it's all good, we're at peace. Whenever on the inside you're really not at peace, you're freaking out. The negative side of faking it would be, someone just really is broken on the inside, or they're in need of healing, and they kind of live in a place where it's chaotic, or they're fearful, or they're always troubled. And since they don't necessarily have the tools to get healthy or get free, they kind of adopt a permanent, fake smile, and kind of put on a permanent sort of everything's okay, I'm okay, you're okay, everything's fine. And that would be more the thing that we want to grow out of, or we want to kind of receive what we need from the Lord in order to get past that, I think.
Yeah, so I think I hear you say like the first part is more of like a covering.
Yeah.
So, as a leader or as a parent, sometimes you can cover what is not really so much peaceful. Yeah. And then the second one is just unprocessed wounding. Yeah. Yeah. So, what does peace feel like to you?
What does it feel like?
What's the experience of peace for you?
Yeah, I think it's both. I typically associate peace with the presence of God. So, the love of God, the peace of God, I think is something tangible. It's kind of like John talks about how perfect love casts out fear. And so it's like there's something present from the Lord that drives out, chaos, anxiety, fear. So I would say I associate peace with both the presence of, tangible peace, or the presence of God, or the love of God, but also I associate peace with kind of the absence of chaos and confusion and offense as well, I think, because a lot of the time the things that steal our peace are more relational. Someone is upsetting us or annoying us, and so we're, was actually having a conversation with somebody today who's really been struggling with walking in peace because of relational things. And I asked them, why are you giving this person so much control over your life that, you're not at peace because this person, they're very angry at someone. And so they are rarely walking in peace because they're angry with somebody else. But I think, man, if the better way would be to, not allow that person to control you and to steal your peace. I heard somebody say peace is the linchpin fruit of the Holy Spirit. And so it's like when we lose our peace, it's hard to have love and joy and patience and kindness, goodness, gentleness. It's like all of those things kind of go out the window whenever we lose our peace. And so peace is kind of a very important fruit of the Spirit that really impacts the rest of them.
Yeah. I think I'm thinking about some things about what peace is and what peace isn't. So I'm thinking about how peace isn't dismissing, though. Like, I think sometimes, especially maybe even in church culture, it can be thought that just having peace is you'd have to dismiss like some of the things that are hard or wrong, or and kind of not acknowledge them. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And when in all reality, peace doesn't dismiss. Peace leans in into the hard. And peace, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, like peace and warrior can actually coincide.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes you even have to be a warrior to obtain that peace.
Yeah, and to continually
peace,
walk in
right?
peace. Yeah, for sure.
And just how that they are very closely connected. But I think that it's really important that as, we all, hopefully, as followers of Jesus, attempt to walk in peace, carry peace, be peacemakers. It doesn't mean that we dismiss.
Yeah. I think that there's even kind of, we talked about, faking the smile or whatever. There's even kind of a counterfeit faith that sort of ignores whatever the issue is. Like wherever faith is needed, like maybe somebody gets a really difficult diagnosis, or maybe somebody is legitimately really struggling with something, but rather than taking whatever steps they need to get free or get healed or resolve that, they'll just sort of ignore it and pretend that it'll go away and kind of call that faith. Whenever the reality is, no, it's more like denial or, something like that isn't helpful. So
I just want to mention that because I think that's a very important piece of this. And what I think about peace, and when I was talking about that goal the Lord gave me, He really spoke to me through Philippians 4:7 that says, "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." And there's been lots of times, especially over this past year, where I really had to hold on to this verse because my flesh, my soul, could not understand a lot. Like there was not much understanding going on. But my spirit, man, had to just guard my heart, guard my soul in a sense, with the peace of God, because that covers all of the lack of understanding, right? Like there's so many times and so many things that we go through or encounter that we just literally have no understanding for.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not that we can't ask the Lord for understanding on it, because I think that perhaps He'll give it to us, but sometimes we have to engage in the peace before the understanding comes.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think that even like memorizing this verse, I think that one of the episodes where we talked about anxiety and we talked about anxiety attacks, I talked about, I memorized this verse there was a 3-month season, the only time in my life whenever I've had anything that would even be, associated with something like a panic attack or an anxiety attack. I think it was 2017 or 18, but I went through a few months. There was just this real kind of onslaught of anxiety, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking I was dying, but it was anxiety related. Yeah. And I really locked on to this passage. It begins with be anxious for nothing, everything with prayer and supplication and thanksgiving. It talks about basically giving everything to God, and then there's a promise that the peace of God will guard your heart and mind. But that beginning of the passage where it says be anxious for nothing, I would go down the list in my mind, I will not be anxious about this thing. I will not be anxious about this thing. I will not be anxious about this thing. Mm-hmm. And just sort of having the scaffolding of Scripture, having the structure of Scripture inside of me enabled me to walk in peace. Just having that promise having the promise of peace kept me in peace, if that makes sense. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what are some, perhaps we talked about, what are some things that peace is defined by? How do we, what is peace? What does it look like when we're talking about what it is and what it isn't? Mm-hmm. We were talking about how it isn't dismissing, but, what is it then? Mm-hmm. To be a peacemaker.
Yeah. So I wrote down a couple things that I think characterize or that are pictures of someone who's a peacemaker. Mm-hmm. One of them is out of Isaiah 58. It's actually in the fasting chapter where it gives all the promises about fasting. But it says, this is Isaiah 58:9. It says, if you take away the yoke from your midst, the pointing of the finger and the speaking wickedness. So it's talking about, so you're taking away oppression, accusation, speaking witkedness. So words that maybe come out of fear or anger or whatever. If you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in darkness, and your gloom shall be as the noonday. So it's talking about coming out of a dark place, coming into the light. But then verse 11, it says, and the Lord will guide you continually. He will satisfy your desire in scorched places. He will make your bones strong, and you will be like a well-watered garden and like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. So really each one of those you could point to as like an illustration of peace. Mm-hmm. It's the Lord guiding you. So you're not stressing out about where are you going and what comes next, mm-hmm. and all the what ifs about the future. It's the God satisfying your desire even in dry places. So it's rather than worrying about what you don't have or being concerned about the things that you want or that you lack, there's sort of a deep satisfaction that comes from the Lord, mm-hmm. that's not even connected to, what you have or what you don't have. And then you will be like a well-watered garden whose springs of water do not fail. Picture a well-watered garden, mm-hmm. A beautiful place with maybe there's a stream going through the middle of it. There's flowers growing and, there's birds and bunnies and all the things. But, it's a place where you just want to go and you want to be in a place like that and you want to sit because just that atmosphere of peace sort of ministers to you. But this says you will be like a well-watered garden and a spring of water whose waters do not fail. So this is saying that you will be the place where people want to come and sit because something's happening in you as you're going through this process of learning to be a peacemaker, that now people want to come and be around you because it feels like they're in a well-watered garden and there's this spring that they're drinking from and there's this atmosphere around you that, is a peaceful place for them. So I think it starts with getting to a place of peace ourselves, and it ultimately ends in we become a place of peace for other people.
Yeah, that's good. So, I think I even hear you talking about like trusting the Lord, faith and trusting Him in whatever it is that you're, looking to obtain peace in or around or become. And so, which, really does have an element of surrender and acceptance in it. And then also rest. So, when I think about a well-watered garden, I think about, I don't have to do anything for this garden anymore, or anymore, for a minute. So being able to rest. And so I think resting or being at rest is part of the peace process, or even the peacemaker process. And when I say rest, I'm not talking about, just sitting down. It's a whole body experience, right? Like our thoughts, our emotions, even the part of like saying no to things that aren't a part of our assignment for that season. Being able to even delegate where you need to delegate, incorporating boundaries where you need them or where the Lord's asking you to put boundaries, but just learning to be still with Him. When I think about a peacemaker, I mentioned it earlier, but leaning into the hard things, I think that's a really important part of this process, but I also think that it's something that we naturally don't do. Like, we don't naturally lean into hard things.
Yeah, sure.
We kind of lean away from them. But I think that is part of being a peacemaker. And, Jesus modeled that really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, he really modeled leaning into the hard things.
Yeah.
He didn't run from them or anything like that. But he also still had boundaries, right? Like, he didn't go heal everybody, but he only did what he saw his Father doing. And, he was able to maintain peace and be a peacemaker in that way. But I think, sometimes we have to lean into the hard things, and, whether it's doing, processing childhood wounds, or engaging in a hard conversation, or communicating something that you really wish you didn't have to, or working on your marriage, or even disciplining your kids, right? So I just want to identify that. I think also seeking to honor others is part of being a peacemaker. So, putting others sometimes before yourself and honoring them, and then being active and not passive. So those are some things that I was thinking about being a peacemaker. And when I think about active, I even think about something in my world of counseling that I even teach people called active listening. And so it's really it's a hard skill, but it's really a fruitful skill. Have you ever heard me talk about active listening?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, I'll just kind of run through it. So active listening is, have you ever been around someone, maybe even me, that you've been talking to, and they don't, they don't give you their full attention when you're talking? How does it make you feel?
Yeah, it makes you feel like whatever they're giving their attention to is more important than you, or, like they don't really care about whatever you're saying because they're distracted or, not giving you their full attention. Yeah,
and does it feel peaceful?
I don't know if I necessarily equate it with peace or unpeace, but it certainly doesn't, it doesn't feel like it's someone you want to keep talking to.
Well, is that honoring? Let me ask that.
Yeah, definitely not.
No, yeah. So, active listening is where when someone's talking to you, you are actively in the process of listening with them. So there's kind of 6 components. First is be attentive. So in your body language, in your eye contact, turning towards. And this is really helpful, especially when you're working with couples or even, families that are struggling to hear one another. So you can really learn a lot about someone and about their intentions and about, understanding someone, honoring someone by even noticing their body language and the way that you use your body language, right? So, and then the second thing is reflective listening. So that's the next part. So, so why don't you just tell me something about your day?
Something about my day. Okay, so I worked today, but I also had our awesome 2-year-old who I have on Mondays, and another one of our kids who is homesick from school. So that was wonderful and challenging all at the same time. Yeah, because I had a lot to do. But I also had, a couple little awesome people who needed my attention and me to do things for them. So that's a little bit about my day.
Okay, so now I'm going to reflect what you said. I'm going to use reflective listening skills. So I heard you say that you worked today, that you had Magnolia and Lincoln with you, and they're wonderful and awesome, but it was also hard to kind of work and manage them as well.
That about sums it up.
Yeah, by the way, thank you for doing that today. So did you see what I was doing? I just kind of reflected what you said to me and just said what I heard you say. And I also combined it with the next one, which is summarize. I kind of summarized what you said. I reflected and summarized. And then the next one is share. So if I have anything to share with you about what you've said to me, then that would be the next thing. So a minute ago I shared thank you for doing that today. I know that was probably challenging. I appreciate that. And then there's the next part is avoiding judgment. So that means that I'm not going to judge what you just communicated to me. So judgment may look like, well, what's wrong with you? You couldn't do all of it.
Right.
So I would not do that.
Yeah.
And then,
because that'll shut somebody down. If you're critical about whatever they're saying, then they're not going to share more.
Yeah. And it's just honoring. And then lastly, I would clarify if there's any clarifying questions I needed. So, so you mean that you had them all day and you worked?
That's correct.
Wow.
All day and I worked.
So that is active listening. And so what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very useful tool because especially if you're in a relationship where maybe there's just not peace because things are busy and they're hard, or maybe there are relationships that are difficult, relationships that are hard to communicate or hard to get along. I could see how that kind of communication could sort of start to mend some of the cracks in the relationship because you're showing that you care, you're showing that you're paying attention, and you're kind of trying to connect with the person's heart. So, yeah, I think that's very, very good, very useful.
Yeah, and also if you find yourself being a peacemaker in the midst of conflict, it's really helpful, and also being able to use that between the two people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's something that I think we should talk about a little bit, the idea of being a peacemaker in the midst of conflict. Because again, what we're hoping to do is we're sort of talking about our individual lives as going from having to kind of fake that we're at peace to actually walking in peace, and then eventually being a peacemaker, which means that we help others come into peace, or that we can, be a third party between, two people who are not getting along, or a group of people that are not getting along. And so that's something that we could talk about as well. That is a basic function of leadership. It's a basic function of parenting. Being a peacemaker, being able to kind of help two parties who are at odds come to, some kind of a resolution or a place of peace. So I think maybe we should shift and talk about that a little bit.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So in this realm of being a peacemaker, there's some things that we have definitely learned, I think, that have kind of helped us to be in the middle of a lot of difficult situations, marriages that are busted up, or business relationships gone wrong, or, just two people who really offended each other, really hurt each other, and they can no longer work it out on their own. Like, there's got to be a third party who comes in that kind of helps them reconcile. I think one of the absolute non-negotiable keys would be out of Proverbs 18:17. It says, "The first one to plead his cause always seems right until his neighbor comes and examines him." And this is something every one of us who has friends, every one of us who has family members, every one of us who has kids, coworkers, spouse, anybody. What this verse is saying is that if you only hear one side of the story, you only have one side of the story. And I have seen, I've done it myself, where someone has come and there's, a party where there's an issue between them and they need a third party. And I hear one side of the story, and by the time the person is done telling me what has happened, I'm mad at the other person. I haven't even talked to them yet. I only have heard one side of the story. But I'm like, no wonder you're hurt, or no wonder you're mad. It's that other awful person's fault, But the reality is there is absolutely two sides to every story. And until you have heard both